Sometimes in life we just suffer. Sometimes it's from being totally withdrawn, or so much stress that we are totally anxious, or so tired that we are totally burnt out. But our current position is not our final destination. No, indeed. There's hope. So whether it's your personal life, your career, your relationship, your business, or your job, we say there's reason to believe again. And we present from Andy's personal development, the breakout room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned for more. Hey, and welcome. You are live in the breakout room. I am your host, Andy Charles, and we have an amazing and fascinating and engaging, yes, all those accolades to the guest that is going to join us in a moment. This episode is entitled The Feel Good Life, or This Feel Good Life with Isabelle Tierney. And let me just tell you a bit about her before we introduce her to the program. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, stress management expert, and international speaker and educator. She holds two master's degrees, one in international relations from Boston University and another in child development from Tufts University. She also holds an energy healing certification from the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. And there is so much more. But we'll give Isabel the opportunity to tell us so much more about herself as we welcome her live into the breakout room. Welcome, Isabel.
Hello, hello. It is so good to be here, Andy. We met, what, a couple months ago, and it felt like it was so far away when we were going to actually record this. And I can't believe
Yeah.
we're here. I'm so happy.
Yes, we're here, and I'm very excited and looking forward to this amazing conversation that we're gonna have. We synergized so much in that pre-call that I too was actually looking forward to this day. So yeah, first of all, Isabel, I just want to ask you one simple question. When people hear your name, Isabelle Tierney, what do you want them to think about? What do you want immediately to come to their mind, maybe as you are continuing to build your legacy?
Oh, somebody that deeply cares about people's lives feeling as good as it can feel, because I know what's possible with our own resources and our own practice is to really live a life that feels really good. And I want them to think about my name as someone who can help them do that.
Yeah, wonderful. How did you find your true passion and your
Mm,
true calling in life? The thing that really you are now truly defining.
mm. Suffering, like so many of us, right? My own suffering. And so for the first 30 years of my life, I had experienced trauma as a kid and then
Hmm.
experienced the after effects, the aftershocks of trauma through a
Yeah.
really difficult struggle with an eating disorder. That was the way my trauma came out. I had anorexia and then bulimia. I struggled with that. And,
Wow.
uh,
Wow.
and then I discovered the book, The Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you remember that book. That book kind of blew me open, like, oh, maybe there's more to life than just suffering. And then I went to this healing school, and then I became more and more interested in self-development and helping people. And then I started building a private practice helping people. I became a licensed therapist, but I was burnt out. I was overwhelmed. I was still struggling with food. And I was like, wow, in spite of all these external successes that everybody would look at my life and say, your life is amazing. You have three children, a beautiful house, everything. I knew what I was feeling inside. I knew the overwhelm and the anxiety and the pain and the loneliness, like, and I was like, I've got to find a different way. Like, this can't be what success is. Like, this can't be what success is. And so, over the last, 10 years, I've worked with this methodology and taught it to other people that helps us recognize really our degree, we call it our feel good level. Like, well, how good am I actually feeling right now? And then if we're not feeling optimally as we can, we practice these three steps and bring us back into like aliveness and presence, and I'm grounded, and I feel abundance, not only because I'm so lucky and blessed, but I feel abundant because I have so much life force. And and I think we often think of success that everybody's got is got to look the same. It's a lot of money or a lot of public fame. Like, this is about life force that's unique to me and how life force shows up for me, which is somebody who's very passionate, very engaged, loves connection, cares about people deeply, and I'm living that. I'm living a life that allows me to do that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm hearing so much passion in your voice, Isabel, and I'm getting the connection between the suffering that you spoke about and the fact that you came to a place where you recognize that you're going to use that suffering as a fuel now to inject that good feeling that you're speaking about. You mentioned three steps. You want to share those steps with us as we get into the heart of the matter?
Yeah, yeah. So the methodology is has a very simple formula for transformation, and that's awareness plus
Yeah,
action equals transformation. So
right.
often in the self-development world, there's a lot about awareness, mindfulness, be aware, but then we don't know what to do with it. And especially as a therapist, I would help people become aware of their patterns and their traumas and their core beliefs. But then what? A lot of times awareness does a lot, but it doesn't solve everything. So, first, you have to recognize that you are feeling disconnected. So, that's the first part of the work. We use a scale that helps you recognize the signals of, oh, I'm feeling a little anxious, or I'm feeling a little lonely, or oh wow, I really have the impulse to go into the cabinet and have a bag of chips for no reason at all. Like, you learn your signals that let you know you're disconnected.
Yeah.
And then the three steps as you stop, because that you are not connected to yourself. So any action that you're going to take from that disconnected place is going to be distorted action. It's going to either hurt yourself or another. You slow down and breathe, which starts bringing you back into your body, bringing you back into your deeper self. And then you go up, you do a feel good habit, what I call a feel good habit that reconnects you deeply to what feels truly good, not in the moment good, right? Like a chips or yelling at somebody or finishing the
Mhm.
bottle of wine. We call those false good habits. But you do a feel good habit once that actually feels good. And so again and again and again, you track yourself. If you're in what we call the red zone, you practice the three steps, you come back, you come back, you come back. It's not, I'm not living all the time in this enthusiastic open place, but I notice immediately and I have the tools to bring myself back to it just as immediately. And that's what I love about this work. I'm not rainbows and uniform. I'm not a rainbows and unicorn type of person that's like, oh, you're always going to live in bliss. No, we're human. We're human.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I'm listening to the very deep connection that you are hinting that people should have with themselves, Isabel. And that's extremely important. And I'm thinking to myself, what are some of the key factors that takes people so far away from their real self that they become lost
Yeah.
and they need to get back to that place where foundationally I am who I am and I enjoy who I am. I embrace who I am. I love who I am. I accept who I am and I can feel good about it. What are some of the factors that can bring us so far away or so far apart from the real and true us?
Oh, I mean, life, like, you know, like if we were to use a spiritual story or transpersonal story,
Yeah.
we supposedly come from oneness, from unity, and then
Yeah.
we come into and land into these human bodies where suddenly we're helpless and we're separate, and we start experiencing the feeling of separation from the moment we're born. And then really for me, it seems like this whole life is a process of like learning that you don't want to be in separation and learning to come back to unity. And then we die, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
No, but no, the dying is not the lucky part. If you find that you actually are
Yes.
unity on a human level, I mean, how few of us get loving, supportive families, environments that support us financially enough, places that are not at war, politics. I mean, there's so many things out there in the world that teach us that we are not whole, that teach us we are not good enough, or teach us that the world is not a safe place. And so we develop a nervous system that's always on the alert, and it's always watching for signs of impending danger. And so we're always in the stress response. And I had trauma. I didn't have financial trauma, like my family was well off, but I had stupendous amount. I had physical, emotional, mental, and sexual trauma. So I chose to come in and experience all those traumas so that I could then help, people who go through that. But how few of us actually have a childhood that encourages that feeling of well-being and of centeredness. I think it's getting better with this generation. My
Okay.
daughter, one of my three kids, has two children, and I'm watching them be raised knowing all the beautiful things you described. I think it's changing, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm reminded of an account in the Bible. I believe it's from Luke 15, and it speaks about the prodigal son. I don't know if you're familiar with that story. And he takes his inheritance from his father before the time, goes out, and he has a ball. And I don't know what they did in those times with regards to partying and womanizing stuff, but he must have had a grand time because shortly after he was broke
Mm,
and found himself working for someone who was a farmer, and he was in this pigsty, and he actually slept in the pigsty and had to eat the food that the pig was eating. And then something amazing about what the Bible says is that he came to his senses
mm,
and realized, wait a minute, what am I doing here? If I go back to my father, and even if I ask him to become a servant, my life is going to be whole lot better than it actually is right now. Isabel, is it possible that some people need to just come to their senses and make wiser choices and better decisions about their lives?
you're wait, hold on. I want to make sure you're asking. I'm getting your question. Will you ask? Because I was totally entrained. Like I went right there with you. And then, can you ask the question again? I want to make sure I understand.
I want to use that as an example to say that I get the feeling sometimes that some people's lives become so disconnected because it seems as though they are not willing to face the reality of what their life create this false sense of who they should be. Is it possible that people just need to come to their right senses and make better choices and decisions about their lives?
Yeah, I think that's why I'm asking the question again, because what I heard you ask, do they need to? I don't know if it's a question of need.
Uh-huh.
For me, it's a question of like back to that awareness. I have to
Yeah.
first become aware that I
Yeah.
am suffering. And that means I
Mm,
also have to know there's something different than my suffering. That's a
right.
really big piece. I didn't know when I was suffering that there was anything different. And then I was lucky enough to read that book. And then the book led to the next, so we don't know. It could be a conversation. It could be this conversation that somebody listens to and they're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, there's something different. And then there's the action piece, right? So then it's like, well, then what do I do? And I call this, it's like a liminal period. It's an in-between period when we realize we're actually suffering, but we don't really know what to do yet. And that's a very discombobulating moment in our lives. And often then we go back to what's familiar because we don't really know how to transition to the new place. And there's a reason, I call them false good habits. I want to slow that down. It's because I named that from false gods, like external success, fame, like all those masks you're talking about, they temporarily feel good. If they didn't feel good, none of us would be doing it. What you have to get to is that it gets worse and worse and worse. We usually suffer more and more. And then you've got to know that there's another choice on the other side and be willing to step into it. And that's all a big thing. These are all a lot of changes. But once you do, you can never go back.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. It means, Isabel, that there is still hope for many of us in the world. We just got to take the right steps to the place where hope awaits and then embrace that hope. I'm reminded of a study that I did recently, and they were telling us that one of the reasons why people become addicted to cocaine and those hard drugs is because, in the first instance, when they got the first taste of it, the high is unimaginable because it's like a 10 times the rush of dopamine that you get into your system, and it's an incredible feeling, and they constantly physiologically go back again time and time and time to get it, but it's never there because that one moment was just an awakening of what could possibly happen, but you can't find that again. And so they become addicted to seeking and searching, always looking for it, but it never comes. I use that as an opportunity to think about the people that sometimes seek happiness or good feeling in false ways. And you just alluded to it. Maybe it's through sex, maybe it's through food, maybe it's through gambling, maybe it's through money. But from your experience, how damaging can that be to a person's psyche in terms of how far can they actually go? Is it possible that it can be very dangerous for them and they need to find a way to reel in and turn back?
Oh, I mean, I try to not say it's so crazy when there's synchronicities that I'm like, what? I'm going to say it's so crazy magical. I literally hung up just before our call from a client call. And this
Right.
is a well-to-do woman. She's been in a relationship with her husband. It's her second marriage for like 10 years. And it is such a difficult, challenging relationship. I'm not sure if he's struggling with addiction right now, but it's all the signs of it. And
Yeah.
so again and again and again, every day she's suffering. And then, but she's like, yeah, but I remember what he was like on our honeymoon. And so, but
Ah,
he loved me so much. And then when she gets one sliver of that, when he has 5 minutes where he's not angry with her, she's like, and we were
wow.
literally talking about that. And I remember also I had a real estate agent when I was living in Boulder who was a meth addict. But again, her life, she was a real estate agent. But she said to me, this was so fascinating. She said, I experienced a sunrise one day with meth. And she said, I saw God. So what
Wow.
I think about, that's why I call them, they're false gods and then they're real gods. We are always trying to come back home to what I call God, but we do it, we haven't been taught to do it in ways that actually reconnect us to God. They are these false gods, and I really think many of us have to go through that in order to come to be like, oh, that's a false god, hold on, I can actually feel like this woman felt during the sunrise, but
Yeah.
without having to do meth. But it's much harder. Like one hit of meth and this woman was feeling it. To really feel God, you have to meditate, you have to visualize, you have to practice gratitude. So God does not make it easy for us to
Mm.
connect, at least at the beginning. Sometimes I get so irritated by that.
Wow, wow. I love that. I love that, Isabel. Thank you so much for sharing. You know, in terms of the people that you deal with, the people that depend upon you to help them to have more clarity to get this good feel life. Have you observed any patterns with the things that they struggle with? Or is it a variety, different, a number of things that they come to you and they bring them before you, and then you have to address it from a place of seeking to help them?
Yeah, our conversation leads me to the perfect answer. I could give you external variables that are different. Well, this person, her marriage is falling apart. This person is 50 pounds overweight. This person can't find a career she loves. But at the core, as we've been talking about this whole session, this podcast is disconnection from the
Yeah.
deeper self. And so that's one piece. Like what I say, there's a beautiful line by this author that says there's a perfectly good reason for everything we do. And I remember I was struggling with my eating disorder at that point when I
Hmm.
read that sentence, and I was shaming myself and I felt helpless and hopeless. Like every day I would commit that I was not going to act out the behavior. And at the end of the day, every time I did. And I read this sentence, there's a perfectly good reason for everything we do. And I kind of went on this quest like, okay, what could be the good reason for these destructive behaviors I'm doing? And what I discovered is we are peace, love, and joy. We, at the core of who we are is peace, love, and joy. And when we are disconnected from peace, love, and joy from various reasons that we've been talking about, we feel on we feel what is the word, uncomfortable. We feel like something's off, and then we spend years trying to reconnect, but with
Hmm.
false good habits. And so that's one
Yeah.
of the pieces. Yes, we're all trying to find our way back home. And the other piece is almost everybody that ever walks into my office waits for crisis before actually getting help. So this ties into these other things we've been talking about, like why do people wait so long? When we know there's a much better way to live your life, they wait till crisis. And I wish that that's one of the reasons I want to do podcasts, because I want to tell people, don't wait till crisis, because it's much harder to heal from crisis. Like realize there's something better for yourself before you have to get into a car accident or get diagnosed with autoimmune disease or cancer or go through a divorce. Like we human beings wait till the last minute usually to make changes and necessary changes. And that's okay too. I
Yeah.
just would rather
Okay, so I'm gonna strengthen your point a little bit, Isabel, by asking you something deeply personal. And I'm going to read so that you understand exactly why I think this is extremely important. I'm sure you would have shared this on many occasions, but people need to hear it one more time. After running a successful therapy practice for more than 10 years, Isabel's journey took a turn when burnout led to the loss of her health and her marriage. Wow. But this is the part that I love. In response, you develop a transformative methodology aimed at fostering a life of aliveness, inspiration, and joy. How did you do it?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for bringing that back. It's funny. Sometimes because I've healed so many of these traumas, it's like a part of me doesn't even want to talk about it anymore. And I forget
Mm,
that
yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
helpful for people to hear where I
Yes.
used to be and where I can get. Yeah, so it seems like you
Yeah.
understand what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yes.
I never want to be manipulative with my stories, and yet you remind me they're really helpful for people. Um, Really, I have, ever since I discovered the Celestine prophecy. So I was 31 when I opened up to spirituality. I literally didn't know psychology, didn't know spiritual. I was completely disconnected. And then at 31 had this awakening. And so I had been studying Buddhism, manifestation, like every single spiritual and self-development book for almost, what is it, like 10, 15 years before I went to this burnout. And somehow that still wasn't enough. And so when I resolved to do something, because I mean, Brian and I divorced, and the cool thing is we're back together. I don't know if you know that, Andy. We're
Yes.
back
Yes.
together, and primarily because of this work.
Yeah.
And look at my health. I had adrenal exhaustion. I literally couldn't even get out of bed. I had to stop working for a little bit. I really decided to bring together all the teachings that I had ingested and metabolized with my own experience as a clinician of really seeing like what helps people and like what really creates transformation in the most effective way possible. And that was really tracking their nervous system and tracking their stress response, because I realized that everything we don't want occurs when we're in the stress response, and everything we long for shows up when we are in what's called the relaxation response, which Dr. Andrew Weil called the God response. So teaching ourselves to recognize when we're in the stress response, right? We want to overeat, we want to yell at somebody, like whatever it is, doing the 3 steps to get ourselves out of that, going back into the relaxation response. Everything we long for lives in there: love, intimacy, joy, creativity, intuition. It's all there in a physiological response. And so I became obsessed. I became obsessed. Like, well, how do we live a life where we're not constantly in the stress response and where we can be? I call it the thrive response, because it's more than the
Okay.
relaxation. It's like we're alive and relaxed. That's the beautiful balance. We're not just like sitting on the couch eating bonbons. Like, you can feel my aliveness. That's why I love that you read that. That's one of my favorite words.
Yes.
Mm.
Aliveness. I love it. It says so much about the reality of the human spirit and how we are supposed to be, because we've been created to be alive, and it's for a purpose. So, Isabel, I just want to share a video with us, and I'm going to get some commentary from you.
Hello,
Stan.
beautiful people. So, I really wanted to go hiking today. Nature and that's a feel good habit for sure. And as I got to the parking lot, I realized that it's going to rain. And so I don't know if you can see it. It's raining. It's raining on my phone. And at first I was like, I'll just go home. And then I was like, no, F that. Um, the value, right, I've got is to be in nature because I know that raises my frequency. And so I decided to be willing to deal with the discomfort of the rain in order to get my higher need, my higher value met. And then that made me think about life and all of us. What are we willing to be uncomfortable with in order to meet a higher need, a higher value, a higher goal? And how often do we let discomfort? Oh, I don't want to make that phone call. I don't want to get on the live. I'll just write the post. I don't want to ask for a raise, whatever it may be, because we don't want to move through the discomfort. One of the things I love the most about the methodology, we literally have a whole module on resistance and discomfort, because you're going to run into it when you step into what you really want. So I'm going to close my phone because I don't want it to get totally wet. And I will talk to you soon.
I have never had anybody on any podcast interview pull out one of my lives. That's so funny. That is so great. I have no makeup on. I'm like
Oh my
panting.
goodness. Listen, you know what I love the most about that, Isabel, is that you were speaking about uh, the spirit of understanding the power of discomfort, and you were discomforted. The rain was falling, you were moving, you were kind of pursing and passing your breath as you were going up. And it seems to me as though everything that you were speaking about, you were actually practicing and feeling. And the message is so good. I just need you to emphasize it a little bit more for us, please.
I mean, this is the way I teach. Well, it's one of the ways I teach. I walk my talk. I
Right.
have to say, I have a judgment, and my apologies for having judgments. Still do, I'm still human. For people who teach things that they really are not living. I'm not talking, again, like I said, I'm not always this perfect human being, but I really walk my talk. And I notice pretty darn fast when I'm disconnected or when I'm about to hurt myself or somebody. And so that is the way that I teach. Is like life is always teaching me something. There's always a teaching that I can do. I put meaning onto everything, even if it's raining and I have to deal with discomfort. So that's one piece. So if I want you to imagine life as ever expanding circles, all right? And there's every time we expand to a next level in our life, we run into what I call them zones of turbulence. So imagine this is the circle that you're in right now, and you're like, oh, I really want to grow. Or maybe it's in relationship, in your career, and so you're trying to expand to the next phase of your life, which is impossible not to expand in life. So right around that circle, before you go to the next phase, is all our unhealed beliefs, our unhealed emotions, our unhealed stories that have prevented us from going to this next level, that have kept us in our comfort zone, that have kept us living small. So if you don't know that we call them zots because it makes them lighter than they actually are, because the zone of turbulence is hard. It's when you decide you're going to change your diet, you're going to stop people pleasing, whatever it is, and then you suddenly run into all kinds of obstacles. You suddenly really crave the cookies you were, you were trying to get away from. Maybe your friend is asking you to do something and you're like, oh, I can't say no. Like, you're going to run into obstacles. If you know these, oh, I'm in a zot, I'm counting on it, then you will be able to look at it and to say, oh, what's keeping me stuck in this moment? And then you'll be
Yeah.
able to move through it and go to the next level. If you think there's something wrong for running into resistance and obstacles and triggers, then you are going to stay in your comfort zone. So count on discomfort. Discomfort, it's like working out. When we work out, if we want to build our muscles, we have to become uncomfortable. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with our own growth. So when you run
Yeah.
into resistance, when you've decided you're going to change something, count on it. Count on it. Don't be scared by it. Welcome it. Oh, it's a sign I'm growing, as opposed to it's a sign that I can't do this. That's a really big, important discernment to make. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm moving my camera. I just realized with my legs because I'm so excited.
You're excited. You are full of passion. That's good. Full of aliveness. I love that word. What comes to mind is a famous quote by a first century senator of the Roman Empire. His name is Publius Tacitus. And he said, and I quote, the desire for safety stands against every great and noble enterprise. And what he simply meant by that was this: the more we seek for safety, the more we seek for comfort, the more we seek for a place of security, is the less we want to gravitate or graduate to a place of enterprise, to a place of actually accomplishing and achieving, because we cut off ourselves from the ability to understand how our spirit of resilience can now bounce back and show us something about ourselves that we did not know before. And no, it's not that life is happening to us or for us. Life is just life, it's just happening. But how do we see it, the lens that we see life through? And then how do we manage ourselves? And then how do we hold true to the values that we are supposed to have as people, as humans? Wow. I'm sounding like I'm going off on a tangent there, but it is just so riveting what you say and the aliveness I'm seeing, Isabel. How do you tell people to think about the future in a positive light, despite their present circumstances
Mm.
do not convey that in terms of its reality?
Well, I want to, so can we pin that question? Because I want to go back quickly to the comfort zone piece.
Sure.
One of my favorite mantras. So, one of the things to know about me, and I wish I had thought about this when you first asked me the question, what do you want to be known as? I want to be known as somebody who does not use shame or fear to inspire people to change and actually
Wow.
normalizes.
Wow.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. So we are literally wired to resist change. Like our brain is hundreds of thousands of years old, and that says change is dangerous. Stepping out of the herd and doing your own thing is dangerous. So when you decide to change, at first you might be really enthusiastic about it, as we all are, and then you're going to run into hundreds of thousands of years of evolution that is going to scream danger signals, danger, 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 danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of my favorite lines of the work, my work is, it's not your fault. So that's the first thing. It's not your fault. Those of you listening right now going, but I'm still stuck. Not your fault. This is what you're wired to do. But it is your responsibility, if you truly want to change, to do something about it. So first, normalizing comfort zone. And for those of you who are like, yeah, but I know my comfort zone is not bringing me what I really want, is, as you were saying, start taking action, counting on the fact you're going to be scared, counting on the fact you're going to be uncomfortable. This is why I offer my course. Like, we can't do this alone. So that's my other piece. Be with the community, whether it's just one friend, whether it's a coach, whether it's a group of people. I think really changing to lead the life we want is, I don't know if it's almost impossible to do alone. Let me say it differently. I don't want to do it alone. Do you know how many people I get on the phone with every day that remind me, or that I remind them, that we can change, that there's a different way? Like, I rely on other people to keep inspiring me and me inspire them, because it's hard to do it alone, because our old pattern,
Yes.
old wiring
Yes.
will keep calling us back.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that reptilian part of the brain, boy, it always wants to go back to that place of safety. So the question, and thanks for sharing, Isabel. The question that I was asking you is, with the people that you work with, do some of them come and, based on their present circumstances, they are seeing a bleak future? Tomorrow is not bright. They can't see the silver lining because the clouds are so dark. And if so, how do you help them to develop new neural pathways and at least see things differently?
Yeah. The What I love about the methodology is because its primary job is to stop people at what is called the choice point. So the choice point is that moment between the moment you're triggered into something and that you're going to do an old behavioral pattern. Like, you're
Yeah.
feeling anxious, you're going to turn to cookies. Your partner is irritating you because they didn't do something, you're going to withdraw, whatever it is. So what the methodology does is it makes you recognize you are at that choice point. And instead of going down the old neural pathways, you're talking about rewiring, those are deep grooves. It actually makes you stop, slow down and breathe, and choose a new neural pathway. And at the beginning, they talk about neural pathways are like super highways when they're well used. At the beginning, it's so easy to go down the old neural pathway, but every time you choose the new habit, and it's like they say, it's like a jungle, and then you're taking down some of the bushes and more bushes, and eventually the new neural pathway becomes the super highway. So every single time people find themselves in the place of bleakness, or the place of acting out their old patterns, they do the work, and whoop, they start developing the new habit. Whoop, whoop, again and again and again. And 5 weeks, people go up by at least what I call feel good levels, 2 feel good levels in just 5 weeks of practicing this work. Like, it's just astounding because it's simple and it's effective, and helps you right at that choice point. And I just did a talk with Jack Canfield for his community, and he has this formula that says event plus response equals outcome, right? So an event occurs, then how we respond or react is the next thing, and that creates the outcome of your life. And he
Yeah.
said, this was the only tool I've ever seen, the methodology that helps people in that moment of the response and tells you exactly what to do. Like those 3 steps lead to a different outcome again and again and again. So then you come to know that it doesn't matter what's happening in your life. Like, you can always come back to peace and love and joy, like every time with this work. It doesn't matter. But then your life starts changing anyway. So that's the good side effect anyway of this work.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. That was an amazing response there, Isabel. Thank you so much. I'm reminded of a quote that I saw recently, and the person was saying something like this. I think I'm gonna get it right. No matter how hard you think or ponder or imagine something, when it actually happens, it never is the way you thought it was going to be. And that kind of hit me because it made me realize, Isabel, worrying about what's gonna happen and how it's gonna happen and when it's gonna happen, it's like zero. There's nothing there. It doesn't make sense. What we should focus on is, how do I manage myself in such a way that I impact a better and more positive outcome for my future, my tomorrows? And I think that is much more engaging and something that you are actually alluding to. So yeah, it's just good. It's all wonderful. What is the
I'd love to
future?
say something about worry, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, it's not our fault. We are
Mm,
wired to worry. We
yeah,
have
I
this
know.
thing, you've probably heard of it, called the negativity bias. And the
Yeah,
negativity bias makes us look for what's wrong, because if you are in the woods camping by yourself and you're in a tent and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you hear rustling leaves, you want to worry, right? There's something. The
yeah,
problem is our brain is all the time thinking that we are in that kind of danger when we live in the
yeah,
stress
yeah,
response.
yeah.
Um,
That's right.
and so, the practice of coming back to the present moment and being like, I'm safe, like being that one of your feel good habits out of the 3 steps is a very important and difficult practice to do, meaning we have to rewire. We're not just rewiring our personal brain, we're rewiring the human brain. Every time any one of us does that shift in perception, we're actually helping the universal. I believe we're helping this whole planet every time one of us does this work.
Yep. I agree. Totally. I agree. And now let's see how fast we are supposed to do what we are supposed to do. Here we go. Stand by for this.
If you think that your expansion into the next level of your life is supposed to happen linearly, I say stop that. Your expansion at this point, this time in our planet, this time in your life is supposed to happen in quantum leaps. No joke. Like things you could have never imagined are going to happen to up-level you to the next level of your life. So if you are tracking for linear, traditional expansion and are disappointed when those things are not happening, that's because it's not supposed to happen like that. It's miracles that are supposed to happen. Crazy synchronicities, connections you can't even imagine, up-leveling you can't even imagine. So don't get stuck thinking your growth should happen the traditional linear way, and be open to magic instead.
Yeah. Wow. I love it. I love it. Expand on that. I love it. So full of aliveness.
Well, I mean, if we look at our lives, it's very rare actually that the really fabulous things that have ever happened because we controlled them, right?
Uh-huh.
Like meeting my husband, like, that moment I was at the Tufts pub, bam, seeing him 39 years later, no, like, so that's one piece. Like, if you really look at your life, you realize you're actually not in control of most of the things that happen to you. The second piece is, if you had told me a year ago that I would belong to this group called the Transformational Leadership Council, which is Jack Canfield's group, that I would have presented there, that Jack Canfield liked the work so much. Not only did he bring me to one of his group, but now I'm going to be on his podcast in August. He's
Yeah.
bringing me to his high-end group. If I thought, you know what, I've got to build a social media following, and if I get 1,000 people, then maybe this person will interview me for their podcast. Like linear. This went quantum, bam! Suddenly, Jack Canfield, the leader in one of the top leaders in self-development, and it's always like that. And when I try to use my human mind to predict the future, I limit what's possible, and I miss synchronicities or coincidences that I'm meant to follow, because I'm like, no, this is the way life is supposed to happen. And it's not just that it's limited, I actually miss way bigger possibilities that could happen because I'm so tunnel vision. That's what the mind is, the ego, tunnel
Yeah.
vision, tunnel vision. And then we get disappointed because we didn't get this thing and we're not realizing that this thing could happen.
Wow. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. We've come to the end of this amazing broadcast. I wish it could
I
continue.
thought that
Hey,
was
anyway,
10 minutes. They did not. We did not just do 45 minutes. That's crazy.
you know what, Isabel? You're going to have to come back. You're going to have to come again at some point in time. So, what I want to do now is I want to put something up on the screen and I want you to tell the people how they can make contact with you for your services, your counseling, your therapy, and to have this feel good life.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. So you have my Facebook page, and then you have my Instagram page, and then you have my website. The other thing you can do is you can reach out to me directly at isabelletierney@gmail.com. So that's easy to remember. What if you go to the feelgoodlife.com? Actually, I should have given you this. Maybe I didn't have it yet. Go to the feelgoodlife.com/habits. All right. Feelgoodlife.com/habits. You get a free ebook that's probably the favorite ebook I have ever written that actually helps you build a feel good habit toolkit. It teaches you the methodology. That's part one. Part two is you look at the toolkits of your habits and you say, yeah, that's a false good one. That's a feel good one. And then part three, you actually learn to use the methodology in the moment using the feel good habits you have built yourself. It's a gorgeous, powerful ebook. So the feelgoodlife.com/habits, it's free. And the moment you sign up, you will get it right in your hands. And I love that ebook.
Thank you, Isabel. So you heard it, folks. www.thefeelgoodlife.com/habits, and it's free, free, free. So until next time, this is your host Andy of Andy's Personal Development, live in the breakout room with our special guest Isabelle Tierney, speaking about this feel good life. So long, Godspeed, God bless, Shalom, Namaste.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Hold on.